What to do if the police stop your car? Imagine you're driving down the road, you've done nothing wrong, and all of a sudden you see lights behind you. What do you do? What do you say? How do you act? Hi, I'm Jeff Hampton with the Hampton Law Firm. Thanks for joining us here today. And on today's version of what we're doing on my YouTube channel, I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through a step-by-step approach about how to protect yourself if you end up getting pulled over by a police officer during a traffic stop. All right. And by the way, if you wait around till the end of this video, I will also provide you a free ebook, What to Do If You Have Been Charged with a Crime in Texas. Okay, so let's start off. Police officer walks up, pulls you over and walks up to the side of your car, and you roll down your window. First of all, what should you say? Let's talk about what to say. Now, basic advice is this. Be ready with your insurance and if you have your insurance card and your driver's license. Listen, generally speaking, you should be nice, be cordial with the officer. If you're nice and not irritated with the officer, there's a much better chance you're going to be released quickly and you'll escape any possibility of a further investigation, keeping you on the side of the road for a long period of time, okay? Now, what if the officer starts speaking to you, but he's not real kind to you? What if the officer starts acting rude? Well, let me just say this, because we've seen this happen so many times. If an officer starts raising his voice at you, the worst thing for you to do is to raise your voice back at him. It's never a good idea to match aggression with aggression. So the louder the officer is with you, the calmer you are. Remember, you're on video. The calmer you are, the better you will look and the more unprofessional the officer will look if he's being rude to you, okay? And so the goal here, remember the goal is to end the encounter, is to end the traffic stop for you to be able to go on your way. Being respectful and compliant with basic requests will go a long way. That being said, never waive your rights. It does not mean you have to waive your rights. You can still be respectful, you can still be somewhat compliant, but it does not mean you have to waive your rights when you're dealing with the police officer, okay? So what if the officer begins to ask you questions? Here's the next step. What do you start thinking about there? Well, remember, this is the investigative phase of a case, and everything that you say at this point in time can and will be used against you, and the officer is not, let me repeat this, is not required to Mirandize you at this stage of the game. Okay? At this stage of the investigation, they do not have to read you your Miranda rights, and you do not have to affirmatively waive those rights. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Miranda rights. We all know what it is. You have the right to remain silent, right? You have the right to an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. Well, they don't have to read those rights to you unless a couple of things are in place. Number one, you have to be in custody. You must be detained, and that means not free to leave. Well, the officer is going to characterize just a traffic stop as he's just talking to you, and there's no detention, and you have not been placed under arrest. And that's what the law says too, okay? The second thing is he has to be interrogating you. So if you start offering a bunch of information also, even if you are under arrest and he's not asking you questions, without them asking you questions and you just volunteer information, all of that can be used against you in court, every bit of it. So please understand, at this stage of the game, everything you say, they can create a basis for probable cause to arrest you, okay? Now, basic answers to questions or providing basic answers to questions, that's fine. That's not a big deal. But beware direct questions. We see this happen sometimes from police officers. They'll ask you a direct question demanding a yes or no answer, but the question is provided in a way that makes it seem like you're admitting to something regardless of whether you say yes or no, right? You do not have to answer yes or no questions. You're not being cross-examined in a courtroom. You can provide exactly the answer you want to provide to that officer. For example, if you do admit to drinking in a DWI, you are likely going to be cited or go to jail. So there are certain things that if you just start admitting to, it will be used against you. They're not going to just give you credit for it, all right? So that was number one, what to say. Number two, how to act. What if the officer asks you to get out of the car? Well, option number one, and we see this happen sometimes, option number one is to get very upset and demand a justification as to why. Now, I just want you to understand, if you do this, the officer is very likely to escalate the encounter. Okay, they're not going to be happy with that response. So what they'll likely do is they're going to now look for any reason to arrest or cite you. In fact, if you raise your voice loud enough or you start refusing to step out of the car after the officer starts demanding that you do that, we've seen officers do this many times where they'll say, okay, you're resisting my arrest. You're resisting being detained. Oh, or you're trying to evade arrest, right? Now all of a sudden they start looking for any reason to say you're not being compliant, so now I have a separate probable cause to force you out of your car and place you under arrest at this point, okay? And the same thing will happen, I've seen this happen too, where they go to grab you out of the car and you pull back. That's either resisting or you inadvertently brush across them and they think you've now assaulted a public servant. These are things to be aware of, that as the emotion escalates, you dramatically increase the probability of the officer finding a reason to arrest you, okay? Now, the option number 2 is to be respectful and comply with the requirement to get out of the car, but also respectfully say that you're happy to answer any questions that the officer has as long as your attorney is present. Now, I'm going to tell you what the officer's probably going to tell you. The officer's likely to say, well, you don't have the right to an attorney right now, but you don't know what your rights are. You have no idea. And there's nothing wrong with a United States citizen wanting to make sure they speak to an attorney before they make any other decisions. So you can be somewhat compliant with the request, but not have to get into a lot of detail as far as any of the other questions that are coming out, okay? Now, what if the officer says that you don't have that right to an attorney? And like I've mentioned already, doing that, it's important to rely upon the fact that you just know you have constitutional rights and you need advice. Okay? But then what if the officer asks to search your car? Because it's the next step. What if an officer says, well, listen, you're out of the car now. I need to search your vehicle. 2 options. We're going to go through each one of them. Option 1 is to allow the search. And I'll just say this, if there's nothing at all that you're concerned about in your vehicle, you can always allow the officer to search your car. Okay? But beware, there's kind of like this maxim under the law that says consent cures all. So if you give consent to a police officer to search your car, the moment you consent, the officer will search everything. They'll search you, they'll search your car, and it can be careful because at that moment, things can be twisted and turned and used against you. You do not, and this is so important to understand, you do not get extra credit because you consented to a search. I've had many clients that have told me, but I was compliant. I consented to it. Shouldn't I get credit for that? No, the officer wants you to consent. That's their hope, is that you do that. And it doesn't make it any better for you. It just allows them to run right through it. Now let's talk about option number 2. You can exercise your constitutional right to deny the search. Okay? What if you say, no, I don't give you consent to search my vehicle? Officers must then have probable cause to execute a search of your vehicle. If they have to go get a warrant, then they can go get a warrant, and they'll have to have a judge sign off on it. That will take an inordinate amount of time, okay? We see this happen a lot on drug cases where they'll pull somebody over and they'll say, I need to search your car. The client will say, no, I'm not going to let you search my vehicle. They'll say, okay, well, they don't have any probable cause, so what do? They call for a drug dog. But what if it takes the drug dog 3 or 4 hours to show up because the drug dog's not available? Well, now there's Supreme Court law out there that says that is too long of a time. And as a result of that, even if they bring a drug dog out there and find something, because the client did not consent to the search, the entire search is thrown out. Okay? That's just one example of that. So if they don't have a search warrant, then they're going to have to see something, maybe drugs in plain view. They're going to have to see something else that's there that will give them the independent probable cause to be able to search your vehicle. What if they go ahead and search it anyway? Well, if they search your vehicle anyway without probable cause, your criminal attorney can file a motion to suppress, and pre-trial that can be presented to a judge. And if that evidence was illegally obtained, it is very possible your entire case would be thrown out, because under the Fourth Amendment, basically the law that exists, the case law that exists under Texas and U.S. law, that is called the fruit of the poisonous tree. That means anything obtained afterward, after a bad traffic or a bad search, all of that must be thrown out, not admissible in court. Okay. Finally, what if you are arrested? Oh, and this is so important. Most important, if they tell you, sir, put your hands behind your back, you're under arrest. The worst thing you could do is run. The worst thing you could do is resist. We've had clients that are 100% innocent of what they're being arrested for, but now they have a separate charge that can independently be prosecuted because they didn't consent to the arrest. Okay? Very important. Nobody likes the idea of being wrongfully or illegally arrested at all, but that you must not run. It's very important. You'll make your situation 10 times worse if you choose to do so. And why? Ask why. One of the things you can do is, why am I being arrested? What is it that I've done wrong? Do not fall into the trap of talking the entire time. Don't fall into the trap of believing that you can talk the police officer out of arresting you and letting you go. The best thing you can do in a situation like that is to remain calm, remain collected, and just get through the process so that you'll get in and out of jail if they're going to book you in. And remember, you are being recorded the entire time. So everything you say and your reactions and the way that you look at, the way you appear to be on this video, all of that could be available to be used in a courtroom if your case went to trial. And everything you say can be used against you. So after your arrest, my general advice on this is you need to remain quiet and compliant and just make sure you're able to book out of jail, okay? Then guess what you get to do? Hire a lawyer and fight your case. Now remember, this is general information for you to understand what would happen in a situation if it looked like you were under a situation where a police officer was pulling you over and it leads to all of this. I hope this has been some assistance to you. If maybe you or a loved one are facing a crime, a charge in the North Texas area, I want to invite you to call the number above my screen right now and schedule a free case analysis and a free consultation. We'll be happy to help you with your case. I also promised you a free ebook, What to Do If You Have Been Charged with a Crime in Texas. All you have to do is click the link down below. We'll be happy to send that free ebook over to you. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I'll send you more great content just like this. Thanks.